Greetings, Derek DeBrosse here from Munitions Law Group, munitionsgroup.com. You all probably noticed that the background's a little bit different. We've been toying with the color. The blue did not go over so well with my significant other. She's actually a designer by trade. So we lightened it up a little bit. Hope everybody likes that. And we're going to keep finagling with it. If you have any comments on our aesthetic, please let us know. Even thought about putting some guns back there. Anyhow, let's get to it today. You're going to see some new faces coming on the air real soon. My law partner, Clay Cheshire, is going to be talking about some industry topics. My associate, Michael Truman, will be on the air, and my law partner, Adam, is going to be talking about the weird nuances in gun law that no one ever probably thinks of, such as excise tax. What is that? Exactly. So you'll get to hear from Adam here real soon in the coming weeks. Today, I'm going to start a series, though, for everybody that knows me, knows that I've kind of cut my teeth on restoration of rights, mainly in the state of Ohio, but I've broadened that over my career over the last 16 years into national restoration rights issues. I don't profess to be an expert on every state, of course, but I know what needs to be done at the federal level and how to advise at the state level as well to resolve those issues. So I'm going to talk today in context about Ohio, but it's actually this series is really going to be focused on how federal law works, and we're going to be talking a lot about cases as well. So at this point in time, what I want to start the series on today is just talking about the disabilities and going through those and making sure everybody understands what they are. And then the next video that I do, we'll talk a little bit more about the next stage of the restoration process. And I think we're going to have about 3 to 5 videos or so to get through it all. So I've done this in the past, but never in this thorough of a manner. So today we're not going to dive into a lot of case law or anything. That'll be for another video. But today we're going to be talking about just what the disabilities are. So let's start with the Gun Control Act of 1968, what we call as the GCA. Now these disabilities, as we call them, have stemmed from previous laws such as the Federal Firearms Act or the FFA of 1938. The very first gun control law in this country was the 1934 National Firearms Act. That doesn't have anything to do with restoration or disabilities. So when we refer to disabilities, what we're referring to the layman is basically the inability to possess a firearm as it's defined under federal law, and if you have disability language in your state code, as it's defined under state code. I'll give you a side note, a little bit of a digression here. What's interesting, under federal law, they have exceptions for what we generally refer to as black powder firearms, so muzzleloaders. They're not considered firearms under the Gun Control Act. So if you are a convicted felon that's subject to a federal disability, you can still possess certain black powder firearms as long as they cannot be readily converted into a cartridge load. What's interesting about state law in Ohio, we don't have such an exception. So you can have let's say you have a white collar felony. Say in Ohio it's a 4th degree felony, so it's punishable by greater than a year in prison. As you'll see here in a minute, that invokes that federal disability. So you can't have guns under federal law. But state law doesn't actually limit your ability to have a firearm unless it's drug or violent related. In that instance, then, you can actually possess a black powder gun in the state of Ohio under federal and state law. Now let's change the facts. Let's say it was a F4 assault. Ohio now takes away your gun rights. So you can still possess black powder under federal law anywhere in the country, but not in Ohio because you have a disability under Ohio law, as well as federal, and under Ohio law, there is no such exception to black powder. Just one of those weird nuances you're going to see throughout this series as we talk about restoration, especially when we get to domestic violence. There's quite a bit of weird outcomes based on how they wrote that area of the law. So getting back to the context of the series, we're going to talk about these disabilities. There's 9 of them under the Gun Control Act, and I believe there's 5 under Ohio law. Again, if you're watching from another state, I'd be happy to cover other states' disabilities laws, but just understand that I'm just using Ohio as a contextual element to teach that every state's different, right? And we have different disabilities in certain states than what the federal law shows. So we're going to use Ohio just because it's where I'm from as an example. So if you go to the Gun Control Act of 1968, which is codified at 18 U.S.C. 922, subsection G as in golf, that's going to list G1 through 9. In the gun law world, we call these the G disabilities. So you have a G1 disability, a G8 disability, G9 disability. And that is where we're going to find all these disabilities. So the first one is what people commonly refer to as a felon in possession disability. It's not what the law actually says. What the law actually says is that somebody cannot possess a firearm who has been convicted, so it's got to be an actual conviction, in any court of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. It seems straightforward enough, right? But it's not. If you actually go to the previous section of the Gun Control Act, which is 18 U.S.C. 921, subsection A as in alpha, that section of the law defines a lot of things. And it actually defines what it means to be convicted of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. Yes, only lawyers need to define what that means, even though it seems to be self-explanatory. It also includes, if you look at subsection 921A20, any misdemeanor punishable by greater than 2 years. Now, in Ohio, this never comes up because in Ohio, first-degree misdemeanor, which is our highest misdemeanor, is only punishable by exactly 6 months. But in some states, certain misdemeanors can be place you in prison or in jail, incarcerate you for as much as what I've seen is 5 years. I think Pennsylvania is one of those states. Josh Prince out there, I think, has got some information on his website you can check out about. I think he might have even had a case that went up to the appeals level on that issue, but I'm not certain of that. In any event, just understand that your state's misdemeanors laws might also put you under this disability. Here's where a lot of criminal defense attorneys get themselves into trouble. And I've had defense attorneys, after I've taught CLEs, continuing education seminars, come up to me and say, I've been malpracticing myself for years. And it turns out they were advising clients to take a plea deal from this to that, and the plea rather, in fact, is still a firearms disability. It's important for attorneys to understand that the Second Amendment is a fundamental right. And under various cases, in particular the Padilla immigration case, we have an obligation to tell our clients the effect on those rights from a plea. Otherwise, the plea may be not knowingly made and could lead to an ineffective counsel argument. So with that said, again, any felonies punishable by more than 1 year doesn't mean you did the time. It means you could have done the time. You don't have to do a day in jail. But if that felony has the potential for greater than a year, it's a disability. In Ohio, what's interesting is that's anything from a 4th-degree felony to a 1st-degree felony. We also have 5th-degree felonies. They're punishable by exactly 1 year. They fall 1 day short. Here's a weird anomaly. You're convicted of an F5 domestic violence. It's an Ohio disability, as you'll see, because it's a violent felony. Any violent felony is an Ohio disability. But it's not a federal disability. You might think, well, that's weird. Well, it's not. If you look at the G1 and G9 disabilities that would be applicable in this situation, the G1 is not punishable by greater than a year. It's only punishable by exactly 1 year. It's an F5. And it's not a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, which is the G9 disability. Why? Because it's a felony. It's not a misdemeanor. It's got to be a misdemeanor. So you have these weird anomalies depending on your state law. So in Ohio, you can in fact own a firearm and possess a firearm if you are a nonviolent, non-drug-related felon that's been convicted of only an F5. It's not a federal disability because it doesn't have the potential for more than a year in prison, and it's not a state disability because it's not drug-related and it's not violent-related. And remember, if your state has misdemeanors, that if it's a potential for sentencing of over 2 years in jail, it's also a disability under the G1 disability. G2 is fugitives from justice. I've never had this come up in my career in the 16 years I've practiced in this area, but I believe it means exactly what it says for the most part. I do know there's some cases out there that have kind of touched on this. Maybe next session I'll actually make a note to myself. Let me get my handy-dandy notepad out here, as they used to say in Blue's Clues, and I'll note to myself to get y'all some research on fugitives. But generally speaking, it's never come up in my career, probably because when you're a fugitive and you turn yourself in, you're no longer a fugitive. But I do think there's some case law that says, what if I got a traffic ticket and I didn't show up to court and they issue what we call capias, which is essentially a bench warrant? Am I a fugitive? And I think there's some case law that addresses that. So I'll look that up for you guys to make sure we address that next session. And then number 3, somebody who is an unlawful user of a controlled substance. I did a whole video on this last video, so I don't want to beat this horse dead again, but this applies to medicinal marijuana until it's legalized at the federal level. Just remember that marijuana is the big thing right now, or any general narcotic that's traditionally been illegal, it's made legal for recreational and medicinal purposes. If it's still regulated in the Controlled Substances Act under federal law and you're unlawfully using it, then you're subject to that disability. And remember, in Oklahoma District Court, there was a judge that threw this out as unconstitutional, which I do agree with. There's no due process before this disability is imposed, right? The minute I smoke a joint, all of a sudden I've lost my gun rights. But nevertheless, I've already done a video on that, so I don't want to go through that too much more detail today. Number 4, somebody who's been adjudicated as a mental defective or been committed to a mental institution. And I will pick these apart in various videos as we move forward in much more detail. But this generally, there's case law out there pre-Heller and post-Heller. And Heller is the case from 2008 that talks about that the right of the Second Amendment is a fundamental and individual right that's incorporated to the states. In pre-Heller, there was at least one case, I think it was in Maryland or Massachusetts, where their process didn't require what we generally term due process in order to put somebody in a hospital against their will. It just required maybe an affidavit from a psychologist or something of that nature, and the court had held they lost their gun rights based on that. But after Heller came down, they said, nope, we got to turn that around because due process is required. Anytime a fundamental right is taken from us, such as our liberty, freedom of speech, Second Amendment rights, due process is generally required. I have to have the right to a jury trial, I have the right to evidence, the right to put on my own witnesses and subpoena those witnesses. All of that needs to apply, the right to counsel. So generally speaking, when we talk about being adjudicated as mental defective, in that process, that due process needs to exist. So in Ohio, we call that mental health court. Before you can be kept into a mental hospital, you have to go through what we call mental health court. It's through the probate system. I used to do it for 4 years. And then somebody who's been committed to a mental institution denotes involuntary being committed, not voluntarily checking yourself in just because you're having a bad day. Now, understand that previously under Obama's administration and even into Trump's, Social Security, if you were subject to Social Security disability or any type of benefits and you elected to apply for what's called a representative payee, well, through that process, there's a determination by the government bureaucracy that you're not able to handle your own affairs, and that would be meaning you're adjudicated as a mental defective. Now, Trump and Congress had turned that around for Social Security, and I don't know where they left it with veterans, so that's another question I'll have to get answered. I know there was some proposed bills that would have done the same thing for VA benefits, but I do not have an answer for you that today, so I will get you an answer. Excuse me. All right. Number 6, who has been discharged from the armed forces under dishonorable conditions. That means exactly what it says. Any of you that have served in the military, such as myself, know that the word dishonorable is a term of art, sort of like being convicted of a felony. So if you have an other than honorable discharge or a medical discharge, that doesn't apply. It's got to be an actual dishonorable discharge. The word on your DD-214 has got to say dishonorable. And number 7, somebody who's been a citizen of the United States have renounced that citizenship. Never come up in my practice, but I do know a number of years ago, I think when Facebook went public with their IPO for their stock, I think a bunch of the owners made a bunch of money and they renounced their citizenship maybe to avoid taxes or for whatever other reason. I think the United States is one of the very few countries that taxes its citizens when it makes money abroad. So I know that people do renounce their citizenship for certain financial reasons. But again, there's a formal process in doing so. Number 8, somebody who's subject to a court order that was issued after a hearing of which such person received notice and had an opportunity to participate and restrains that person from harassing, stalking, threatening an intimate partner or child of intimate partner or engaging in conduct that would place an intimate partner in reasonable fear of bodily injury. All this is basically a disability that if you're subject to a protection order, you can't have a firearm. One note that was made to me by a friend of mine in the FBI who's an attorney, she said to me years ago, it's interesting, if you look at the definition of this, Derek, and you go through a divorce proceeding and you have what's generally called a settlement agreement, meaning you don't take it to trial, you and your ex-spouse agree to the terms. Some of the standard language attorneys put into those agreements are, I will not stalk, harass, or intimidate my ex-partner. What those attorneys have just done is created a disability as defined under federal law for that person. Now, my law partner, Adam Barney, had a career in domestic work at the beginning of his legal career, and he and I did an extensive search to see if ATF has ever prosecuted anybody for that, and we have not found one single case. So if you've been divorced, don't go losing sleep because your attorney put this or that into the divorce decree, but just understand that if you're thinking about a divorce, get a qualified gun attorney involved, because understanding weird little nuances like that, those are things that could theoretically come up to bite you in the ass later on. And then number 9, which is my favorite, somebody who's been convicted of in any court of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. And again, I want to go into this in detail at a later video because it's very complicated, a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. It doesn't just give you guys a little teaser. It doesn't have to say domestic violence. It can be assault. It can be disorderly conduct. It just needs to be a violent misdemeanor in which the victim meets the family relationship qualification. Those are your 9 disabilities in Ohio. We're going to, the goal here is to go through this series, break these down, discuss cases that talk about them, and how do we fix these? At the state level in Ohio, there's 5. I'll run through these relatively quickly. Some of them are repetitive. But if you're a fugitive from justice, that's also under federal law. The person's under indictment for or has been convicted of any felony offense of violence or adjudicated a delinquent child for the same. All right, so this is one difference under federal law. Our felonies, it doesn't matter how much time you could have done in jail. It's any felony, F5, F4, F1, doesn't matter. But it's got to be a violent offense, and that's defined under the Ohio Revised Code. We have a section of definitions that says this is what an offense of violence is, and it lists all these different crimes. Also, it applies to adjudications of delinquents for children in the juvenile system. Federal law does not. It talks about convictions. Convictions and adjudications are defined by state law. So if you're not convicted, then you're adjudicated. And if you're adjudicated, you're not convicted, meaning you're not subject to this federal disabilities. Number 3, the person is under indictment for, been convicted of any felony offense involving the legal possession, use, sale, administration, distribution, or trafficking in any drug of abuse, or been adjudicated delinquent child for the same. So again, any felonies of violence or drugs. Number 4, the person has a drug dependency, is in danger of drug dependence, or my very favorite, is a chronic alcoholic. I did extensive research on this for a local government, and that was trying to educate their police officers. And basically, the case law, it sort of gives a definition. It's a repetitive nature of alcoholic behavior is what it comes down to. But it's up to the judges and juries to decide this. I think it's a little bit unconstitutionally vague, open to interpretation. What do they look at? If they look at DUI convictions, well, how many? Is it 3, 3.4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? How many? It doesn't say. Number 5, the person is under adjudication for mental incompetent, has been committed to a mental institution, been found by court to be a person with a mental illness subject to court order of hospitalization. And so that's very much similar to the federal disability. So there are your 5 state-level disabilities in the state of Ohio. Again, if you're in another state, please know that those are going to be very different. In some states, there's only 1, maybe 2. In other states, there's a whole variety of them. And then those are also your federal disabilities. So that's our starting point for today. I'm real excited to continue on with the progression of this series and educate my listeners and my viewers on what we have. And I'm also excited for you guys to see some new faces that are going to be coming on. And I hope that the lighting is to your liking. And we'll tweak it as we need to and change the decorations as we need to. But as always, as I like to say, be safe and carry on.